Oh.
Recording even stoppen.
Early in our Center for the Study of the Second Vatican Council, the collections of which will also be included in the Resilience Transnational Access Program. Today, we have lined up 5 speakers, 5 experts in many fields, but we have asked them today especially because of their expertise in dealing with physical collections, often precious manuscripts, studying them using research infrastructure, and opening them up to the public in many often digital ways. After the talks by our presenters, there will be enough opportunity for a larger conversation. So I would like to invite you to already during the talk raise your questions in the chat so that we can come back to them after the presentations and get the conversation going. So to start, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Wart de Pril. He is our Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies librarian and the collection expert of the Theological Research Collections. As a researcher himself, he understands all the challenges for researchers working with library collections and archives. But at the same time, as head librarian, he has the best insight in our Moritz Saber research collection with more than 1,300,000 volumes, its special collections and its electronic research resources. And today he will open up these collections to you all. It is my pleasure to give you the floor, Wart.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. So, as Professor Bosgaard announced, I will introduce our collections and especially the interplay between digital and physical resources. So here you see an overview of what I would like to discuss. Briefly, some dates, I will not dwell on it, but you see our faculty and our university is very old. It dates back to the 15th century. A faculty library, our faculty library is quite recent, dates back to 1969 after the creation of a Dutch-speaking Catholic university in Leuven. And when it was decided to decentralize library facilities so that faculty libraries could be created. The history of the collections of the university library is very tumultuous due to French Revolution, war actions, and so on. So this library had to start with a very limited collection in 1969. In 1974, we could enter this building where we are sitting now and which you see on the photo. To present the collections in the Moritz Saber Library, this collections grid is I think an interesting heuristic tool to have an overview of our collection. You see 4 quadrants. In the upper left quadrant that contains the research collections, and in the left quadrant below there's the special collections, and in between you could say belonging both to research collections and special collections are what you could call the legacy collections. I will explain that later on. So that is the focus of this presentation. That is more our traditional collection, research collections, legacy collections, special collections. On the other hand, on the left quadrant, you see resources that are quite recent, but are getting more and more important and oblige us to enlarge our conception of what a collection is. And that is, of course, the open access resources were getting more and more important, and also the institutional output. With institutional output, we understand the publications done by professors of our institution, but in the future we will also include their research data, include their open educational resources, which also be seen as part of the collection. You can also, that is, if you consider it left side, right side, you can also consider it from the upper side and the lower side. The upper side, is publication output, and that is you could say, outside of the institution, outside of the library, which we try to integrate in the library. So that is what is called the outside in. The lower two quadrants, that is the contribution of our institution to scientific research, you could say, that are our digitized special collections. That is our institutional output. That is what we try to bring out to the broader scientific world. That is the inside out. So I will briefly present those collections, starting with research collections. And in all of the presentation of these collections, I will first briefly present them. What do we understand by it? And then I will say something about how to access them and how to preserve them, and show how the interplay between the digital and the physical is playing there. And this is what that, because we consider providing access to resources and preserving them, that this is still our basic task of a library. And we use technology to realize this mission, but the traditional task of our library stays the same. So first, research collection. We think that the library, our Maurice Sabbe library, has an international top-class research library with a very broad collection profile. You can see it there on the slide. I will not go deeper into that here, and focus immediately on the interplay between the physical and the digital with regard to access. Our main task is to facilitate access to this research collection, and that is both physical and digital. We have to facilitate physical consultation. Of course, that is one of our major tasks, because also our research collection is mainly available in print. So what is available in open shelf, that is mostly our research collection. On the other hand, of course, more and more is available digitally, and that has, of course, large advantages of accessibility. And of course, we are investing a lot in these digital resources, but we're trying to finding a balance here between a combination of physical and digital resources, because the specific nature, you could say, of theological scholarship that needs both older resources and new resources, digital tools. For instance, a patrologist expects to have the print text edition of the Church Fathers for in-depth study, but on the other hand, he needs the database with the text edition to be able to do text mining. Both are essential for a patrologist, and the lifespan of publications in theology is quite long, so we need to offer those physical books. Of course, the strategy here, and that is what the digital age allows us, is to provide access to as much content as possible. And therefore, we have to use a variety of acquisition models. And which acquisition model we choose depends also on which preservation options it gives us. And on the next slide, you can see an overview. In the past, it was quite simple. What was the acquisition model? Purchase, ownership. We bought books, we bought journals. That meant that we could give access to them and we preserve them for the future. Quite simple. Now, it's in a digital age, it's more complex, and you have to really think about which acquisition model you choose so that you give as much access as possible to resources. But on the other hand, you can guarantee that those resources will also be available for future generations of theologians. That is, of course, essential, because we see our research collection also part as a heritage. We have a duty to make sure that it's available for future generations. So you see here, I will not dwell on it, but you see here that we have various acquisition models, for instance, for core titles of journals that we still purchase print, because we want to be sure also that we can preserve them. For other journal titles, for instance, which are not really in the scope of our collection profile, we only offer access-only model. So what this implies is that we have to think better about what our strategic domains of interests are, what is our core collection. We didn't have to do that much in the past because there was not that much content available, but now the content is exponentially growing. So more and more you have to make choices. You have to really think about what is really essential that we can give access to, and especially that we can preserve. So models that are interesting, for instance, are also EBA models, in which we are investing now, evidence-based acquisition, that we can give access to a whole lot of content, but on the other hand, we can guarantee perpetual access rights on selected items selected by library staff. Specifically, our strategy with open access publications is that we try to disclose them in LIMO, that there is access to LIMO either to specific publications, particular publication, but also to the platforms that aggregate open access journals or open access books. And that is not we specifically, that is KU Leuven libraries in general, invests also in open access platforms that guarantee durability. So let's go further with our special collections. You can see here a description of our special collections. There's what we exactly have with regard to special collections. I will not dwell on it because time is limited. And I will go further into the problem of access and preservation. Again, with special collections, we have to facilitate physical consultation, and this continues to be important for us, even if there is a digital copy available. We do not disencourage people to come to the library and consult our special collections, because a digital surrogate of a heritage object is not the same, especially when you're studying the materiality of the object. You cannot completely solve that with a digital surrogate. With regard to access, of course, that is first, physical consultation remains important. On the other hand, of course, evidently, we open up collections to a wider audience, and physical collection is mostly limited to researchers of the own institution. But of course, we want to make our collections available as much as coverable, visible, discoverable for as much as researchers as possible. And that is possible, of course, through digitization and online publication. So our digitization strategy is twofold. In the descriptions in our catalog, we add as much as possible freely available digital copies, mostly Google Books. And on the other hand, we have structural digitization programs for our starting with our most valuable special collections. There's a digitization program for Incunabula and for the Jesuitica collection, this 17th century Jesuitica books printed in the Low Countries. How do we make this collection and digitized collection available? Most importantly, through LIMO. And in 2019, Digital Heritage Online, Digital Heritage Online, a platform in LIMO was launched. And I will show a screenshot of that. That is our most important point of access for our digital collections, our digital heritage. Of course, our collection is also available on Rayres Search and partly on other platforms, like, for instance, specific platforms created for specific sub-collections, like the Lovaniensia platform, a platform for the Jesuit collection, Jesuit Armarium, and also on aggregator platforms as Europeana and Flandrica. With regard to this interplay of physical and digital, it's also our ambition to make a digital version of every physical exhibition. Here you can see Digital Heritage Online. As I said, the main point of access to our digitized heritage collection and a search environment for that digitized collection. And you can see, you can browse this collection, you can search within the collection, you can browse thematic collection, you can browse by location, by material type, and recently digitized. And then when you browse in thematic collection, you can have an overview of all digitized items of Jesuitica, Martin Luther, Capuchins in the Low Countries, for instance, and so on. With regard to preservation, of course, also here you have this interplay between the physical and the digital. You have physical collections who request a lot of care, and we invest a lot in that, and also using a lot of newly available digital technology to realize that our heritage collection is kept in the best possible conditions. But of course, also more and more important, preservation through digitization, especially for brittle books. And Libis takes care for us for the preservation of these digitized versions in a digital deposit, Teneo. The legacy collections, I already mentioned it. That's about a bit more a difficult category, also with regard to the interplay of the digital and the physical. What do we understand here? You can give many definitions, but what I understand here by legacy collections are collections in between special collections and research collections, collections that are not specifically rare or unique, that are not really an artisan product, you could say, like rare books are, nor have a high functionality for current research. But that does not mean, of course, that they don't have a high research potential. We are convinced they surely have. Dus roughly said, you could say it concerns books and journals from the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, especially journals. Of course, we have more than 9,000 titles, journals. And those collections were integrated in the library mainly by means of deposit or donation, mostly by Flemish and Dutch religious orders and congregations. But and they are they were the signs of the inspiration of these religious orders and congregation, and so they define also the collection strength. The focal points of our collection, of one of the first slides, they are also determined by those collections that we received. And here is really an issue of access. How do you give access to these resources, and especially how do you make sure that our users value these collections and continue to value these collections, because our users are expected more and more to find everything online and to have access to everything 24/7. So how can you stimulate them to make use of these legacy collections, of these print collections? And I three possible options or strategies we have employed the last years. First of all, you have to make sure that they are visible in the catalog. You have to catalog them. We had an on-process stock project to catalog more than 300,000 books. We started in 2019 with a free scan-on-demand service for items in the closed stack. To also make it easier for students and researchers to request something from Stack and to make use of that print collection. They just receive a mail with the scan and they can work on it. They don't have to even come to the library to use this collection. And the third, and that is getting more and more important, you have to use digital tools. You have to put information online about those print collections. To arouse the interest of researchers. So for instance, we had a project, or we're working on a project with regard to mission journals. It's part of our legacy collections. It's a very interesting collection with a lot of research potential, but it's hardly used. So we're working now on a specific research discovery platform on these collections and a website for researchers, so to make these collections more known. About preservation, we prefer to keep them on campus because, as I said, they have an enormous research potential. Digitization is difficult, of course. It's the largest part of our collection. It's impossible to digitize everything. So you need digital tools like special discovery platforms, special websites to arouse the interest and make sure that people come to the library of ARCs for scan on demand so that they continue to value these collections. And then I will not say much about it anymore, but then you have thematic research collections, what you could call, and that is in fact a combination of the three other kind of collections. Thematic research collections contain special collection, contain legacy collection, contain research collections. For instance, those collections are valorized in the context of projects or in the context of research centra. One of the projects is the Jesuitica project that's funded by the Jesuits themselves to catalog those sources and to stimulate research. And there you see, on the one hand, physical collection you have to preserve. On the other hand, all kinds of digital means to support research on these collections, cataloging, tagging, a digitization program, creating a specific discovery platform, creating a specific website, creating tools, and so on. Here you can see the website, and the same for the Capuchins, a collection that was given, what was integrated in a library in 2005. A center was created, and again you see this combination of, on the one hand, preserve the physical collection, on the other hand, develop all kinds of digital tools to make sure that this collection is used, digitization program, website, tools, and so on. And the same fact goes for the Center for the Study of the Second Vatican Council. So to conclude, what we try to offer is the best of both worlds and what is called a hybrid library. Sometimes a hybrid library is called a transitional phase between a physical library and a digital library. We think that this transition will take a very long time due to the specific nature of theological scholarship. So our approach of integration is linking new technology with traditional library services. Our service is to provide access to connect the user with information, but we need more and more digital tools to succeed in this mission.
Thank you very much, Bart, for introducing us in all the exciting projects going on in our library. I think you've shown well that how many challenges there are to make all these collections available for the library users. Also for the people following the webinar, feel free to already raise now your questions that this talk of Bart sparked with you. Raise them in the chat, and then we can come back to them after the different talks. It is now my pleasure to immediately give the floor to Lieve Watteo, Professor Lieve Watteo. She's lecturing in the Art History and History Department at KU Leuven and is library heritage researcher at our own Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies. She's widely recognized for her Anjou Bible research project, but equally well for her research on medieval manuscript illuminations and book and art conservation and preservation projects, which she conducts as the head of the KU Leuven Book Heritage Lab. A book heritage lab that, and I think I can say so without being too chauvinistic, a book heritage lab that serves as a beacon of inspiration for any research infrastructure dealing with religion and history. And it is then also my great pleasure that Lieve Watteo will introduce you today to the work of this Book Heritage Lab and to her research. Lieve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dries, for inviting me to here today, for giving you a brief introduction on the Book Heritage Lab and the work we are doing with the type of interdisciplinary scholars, because I look into heritage items, manuscripts, early printed books in special collections. It's not only the point of view of a librarian, but it's also the point of view of the scholar, of the conservator, of the student. And within this interdisciplinary context, it's very important that we cross borders. And in this new time of digital technologies, and it started, of course, in the year 2000, and there's an amazing evolution in the digital tools that are developed to study heritage. And heritage, it can be a tangible, untangible heritage. But we, from the point of view of the heritage studies, we embrace the new technologies because it gives us so many possibilities to look closer to paper, printed books, manuscripts. In this evolution, we really took the digitalization, but especially the imaging techniques in scope doing very specific work on very precious materials, who are here in the Maurits Sabe Library, but also in other religious institutions like in monasteries, other university libraries, the Royal Library, because we realize that religious heritage, religious book heritage is an incredible source of information to know the past. So the Book Heritage Lab was established in 2016 together with the Imaging Lab, who is a digitalization lab. We joined forces to look what we can do using imaging techniques, high-end infrastructure, to know more about the origin of books. Manuscripts are printed, but also of book bindings, of papers, of parchment, because they tell the history, the material history of the items kept in the collection. So on this slide, you see on the left hand the Book Heritage Lab. It's really a labo, a very clean lab. And on the right side, you see the digital or imaging lab, who is of course a dark area where, because we don't want any disturbance of light sources, we really don't want. The labs are very closely located to the precious collections. So what Wart was showing you, the Preciosa here, or the special collections in the university library. It means we can work with our special infrastructure very close to the items. On the other hand, when we developed the labs and the infrastructures, we really looked that we are very mobile, because we realized that if the books cannot travel to the lab, we have to travel to the collections. So we work on our own collections, but we work also for repositories, collections inside and outside Belgium. The evolution is that we became very recently, on the 1st of May, a core facility for the University of Leuven. And we are very proud of this, because we are the first in humanities who got that status. And what we really want to do is to put the special equipment we have, but also the special expertise in service of students, of scholars on different levels, and to top-end researchers, because we know it's only in this interdisciplinary environment we really can validate the tools we have in our labs. So the combination between the physical study, and you really need, the expert eye, the expert hands, because we are also doing things. It's really the heritage science, the scientific approach of things that happen in heritage collection on the material point, and the digital technologies who can visualize them. So we are creating a third level of information that the human eye cannot see, but through these sophisticated imaging techniques, we can discover. So when we have different projects going on, and it's from study of gospel books from the 8th century to Bibles from different sources through Europe. They came here to the library of KU Leuven. Well, as you know, the library has been burned 2 times, then it came back on several other occasions. So we work and we benchmark new methodologies to look to the physical and the digital sources we can create. We do that with our colleagues, not only here in Leuven. We have, for example, projects working together with the engineers from ESAT, where we really discussing the way how to develop new tools. And we'll show you later, for example, the microdome, who is a device who is using a photometric stereo, who is developed here at KU Leuven, as well the hardware as the software. This collaboration with one side, scholars in art history, in history, in religious studies, and other sides, the engineers, creates a very special environment. Here you have a look to some of the projects we are working on, the digital lab, scanning the fibers of parchment, and material studies are extremely important to give you information on provenance, on scriptoria, on also the pedigree. We call it the material pedigree, what happened to a manuscript when it was created and then it was given generation to the generation. And all this information is involved in a book. We call it also the archaeology of the book. And it's on that point we are trying to get the information. On the right upper corner, you see the microdome, the multispectral microdome, revealing text of the Codex Aikensis. This is the oldest gospel book from the 8th century, where we see that the rubrics written in red in Minion were completely faded, so we could reveal the texts of the prologues exactly through the different imaging techniques. We use also XRF, so it's really methods who are used in art, technical art history, in art conservation. What's very important, it's all non-destructive. We don't take samples because manuscripts are so precious, so fragile, or printed works. So we really, the approach is that we work in a non-invasive way. Here you see one of the ongoing projects here at KU Leuven is, in fact, in context of the 600 years anniversary of the university in 2025, and when the university was established, we were researching the charters. So it's the historical collection of the founding of the university. The charters were dispersed after the French revolutions. They came back, they traveled. And so we're very happy that since about 30 years, they are back at the university. And now we went to a very large project of digitalization, of imaging, but also of conservation of these charters. And on the right side, you see an image, and the colorful image in that is the narrowband multispectral imaging device we have, where on one hand we can visualize faded text, so faded inks through aging, but also through water damage. And on the other hand, we can assess the condition of the parchment from, well, 600 years old. And at the bottom, you see the two papal bulls who are imaged with photometric stereo. So how do we work with the Book Heritage Lab and with VIEW, the new core facility? We don't only look to objects, but also to collections. You have one book, but you have collections from 100,000 books, and they all need, on a micro and a macro level, they need approaches. VIEW is doing the heritage science part, but also the digitalization technologies, and this is the wide range of the different approaches. And we do it, or we aim to do it for junior researchers, so on bachelor and master level, but also for advanced PhD students, and then for wider programs in collaboration with other institutions to have in-depth studies on a 4 or 5 year term. And just, I want to finish to show you the tools we are using, like the Apollo camera, who is infrared reflectography, the Dinolight, we have spatulas, we have the narrow bands multispectral imaging, we have the white light, and the multispectral microdome. And we are working now in one of the research projects, who is from the Book Heritage Lab, to a nanodome, and it's really a very small cupola with about 87 lights who can image the topography of objects, but we really enter to the small scale infrastructure that we aim, and it's in development with the engineers, that scholars can walk in to libraries or into the collections and have in their backpack their special imaging device. So the work of the Book Heritage Lab and the collections here in Leuven are impressive resources to study and to develop new imaging techniques to support research, ongoing research by book historians, book scholars, scholars of art or other heritage materials. And we also, for example, collaborate closely with the archaeologists who are using or who are interested in the same way to this kind of materials. So if you have interesting projects or you want to learn more, please contact us here in Leuven, and we can see what we can do for supporting your research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lieve. I think you're totally right in inviting our participants already to Leuven, and I think they have already understood that we have wonderful collections here in Leuven, and that it's a pity that they can't visit our collections right now, nor the collections described by Wart, nor the Book Heritage Lab, because it's always nicer to see it in real life. Nevertheless, it is possible to see parts of our collections online, and this allows me to make the bridge to Michiel de Klerk, who works for Libis as a business consultant and project assistant. Libis is the service I think Bart mentioned already in his presentation. Limo that is used by the library, the RARA search database, and Limo is the service provider who realizes all these projects. Libis is also involved in is one of the partners also in RARES, in resilience to KU Leuven, and where they are leading work package 3 on data management. And so Michiel already right now works together with many of our partners to improve their operations with the aid of the technical services that Libis offers. And it's then my pleasure that Michiel will introduce you today to the wonderful work of Libis. Here you go, Michiel.
Thank you, Dries, for that introduction. Yeah, I will be discussing first shortly my department, Libis, but mainly the development of Ray research in the RARES project. Libis as a department started in 1973 as a supporting unit for the KU Leuven libraries, but over the past couple of decades, we've grown into a service provider for multiple partners, both inside and outside of the university. And as Dries said, we're mainly known for Limo, which is the catalog for the University Library of the KU Leuven and the association. We provide digital systems for the GLAM sector, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and musea, but also for research support and digitally supported research. We're not only a part of the University Library of KU Leuven, but we're also a division of Leuven Research and Development. And yeah, our internal and external partners range from research groups of 3 people to large archives. So we do a broad spectrum of services for people, both scientific, private, and public organizations. And our goal is always to provide the most modern and user-friendly solutions for the management of their data. This is how we became involved in RARES, which is a consortium of about 12 partners in a European project, which started in well, a few years ago, which is almost finished now. And in it, we were responsible for the development of a unified discovery platform that had as a goal to bring together the digital resources and databases that were already available at the partner institutions, which include both public research institutions and commercial publishers, and to make them available via a unified discovery system. And by doing so, we also try to promote FAIR data, which is an acronym that relates to the findability, the accessibility, the interoperability, and the reusability of data. Because those 4 aspects refer to some general challenges that researchers are confronted with now, which first of all is finding relevant data on the web. There's a very large amount of very useful data available, but the act of actually finding this often requires researchers to go to a lot of different platforms, and quite often there's useful collections out there that researchers might not even be aware that these exist. So the first step would always be um, finding these collections, and then within these collections finding what they need, which can often be a long and inefficient process. And after that, there's a second challenge to overcome, which is actually accessing the data, because you'll come across a lot of different platforms that all have their own look and feel, that use their own search terms, that have their own user interface. These catalogs might be a bit older, so they might not function as well anymore, or there might be problems with persistent links whereby you might find something and then a few months later you try and go back to it and it's no longer there. And a third challenge that comes with the lot of new digital data that is available is that it also offers you the opportunity of combining all of that data from different sources and putting it into domain-specific digital tools like Gephi, for example, for reconstructing historical networks. But this data isn't necessarily interoperable because it comes from a lot of different places that use different data formats and different data standards. So you'd have to go through a whole process of aligning all of this data, which depending on the tools you use could range from quite easy to something that requires more technical expertise. And then finally, there's the reuse of data. The first aspect of which has to do with licensing. You might find a lot of useful data, but it's not entirely clear upfront how you are or aren't allowed to use this data. Whether you're allowed to publish it somewhere in its entirety, or if there's restrictions you have to take into account. And then there's also data documentation. For example, you find a lot of census data, but if you don't know how this data was collected, then you don't know if this is actually useful for your research. So this is basically what the FAIR principles are about and trying to resolve. And with Ray Research, we try to try to find some solutions for some of these issues, also because as a discovery tool, Ray Research is intended for data that's related to religious studies. At the moment, that's mainly manuscripts, books, and personal databases. But there's some specific studies in religious studies that have to be taken, specific challenges in religious studies that have to be taken into account as well. The first of which is the fragmentation of many small collections. A lot of institutions have like say valuable collections of rare manuscripts, but these are relatively small and dispersed all over these institutions, not even necessarily in a single place within a university. So Ray Research hopes to bring these things together, which required us to overcome another challenge, which is that there's a lot of different data types and models and formats used, because especially for small collections, they don't always have the means to have somebody else build their catalog, so they do it themselves, which leads to a lot of specific in-house models that aren't interoperable with other models. So if you want to combine these, you have to create one single model for them. For example, one collection might have a metadata element title for the title of a work, and another might call it the name of a work. And if you combine all of that within a single database, then the machine doesn't know that this is actually the same thing. Which specifically for religious studies also, you come across the challenge of a lot of different languages and alphabets being used, something that's written in a Latin script and a Cyrillic script. Those things, a computer has no way of knowing that these are the same things. And there's also almost no use of authority files, for example. I mean, a human being who finds two works by somebody named Erasmus can know or figure out that this is the same person, but a machine has no way of knowing that two things that have the same name are the same thing. So Ray Research as a discovery tool tries to find some solutions to some of these things. The first of which is the shared data model, which brings all of these collections together. We compared all of these and then found a data model that's useful for all of it. But once people find it, because as I said, it's mainly a discovery tool, we also want to be able to lead them to the platform or the data provider so that they can consult the data at that platform and figure out where they can consult the book if it's only physically available. But when digital representations are available, we also link to those. That's the side that helps people find and access data more easily. But in order to make it interoperable as well, we also have some data export tools that we integrated. So if users find a large set of data, they can all export it and it's all in the same formats. And we also require data providers to give us licensing information so that the licensing and how things can be used are clear, and we also encourage them to provide licenses for their digital representations, which we don't import ourselves, but we do show it on the platform. And the way we implemented this is at the beginning of the project, we collected use cases from both researchers and collection holders, so we could figure out what their needs were, what they expected of a platform, and what they wanted it to do. And then we also, at the same time, collected information about the collections that partner institutions had, looked at them, and then saw how we could combine them via shared data model, which we then compared to the requirements and weighed in what was required of that and what the possibilities were, and all of that then informed the design first of the back end of the of Ray Research, where the data could be stored and retrieved. And after that, the design of the front end, where users could actually use the database to find the things they need. And after that, we also went through as much user feedback and input as we could, which led to Ray Research as it looks now, which supports obviously the collection, normalization, and validation of metadata, so that all of the data that goes in there is actually useful and retrievable. There's also the possibility of federated search, by which external catalogs can be linked. So when users look for something in Ray Research, they find things that are there as well without us having to import it, which has the advantage that if a catalog is updated, we don't have to import all of that data all over again. Obviously, there's also advanced search options. And there's some things that at the moment it can't do, because, as I said, the Reyes project is ending, but some of these things could be implemented in the future. For now, after the end of the Reyes project, we will obviously still support and maintain Ray Research, and will also still be open to new contribution if the data conforms to certain requirements, because there's a lot of work that goes in it, and for future implementation, it kind of depends on how things like resilience go forward. But I'll end there then.
Thank you very much, Michiel. Which will indeed depends of how resilience will go forward. This brings us wonderfully back to resilience. And so, as our final two speakers, we have invited Lineke Timpers and Dr. Sander Vloebergs, who are two of our KU Leuven resilience staff members. who have very good knowledge of how resilience is functioning, and who on the basis of their own research expertises. So Lineke is specializing in systematic theology, Sander is a specialist in medieval mysticism, and on the basis of their own research, they will try to make for you resilience more concrete. I will somehow introduce you in the question, what can resilience now signify for you in the future? And it is now first my pleasure to give the floor to Lineke, who joins us remotely. Lineke, the floor is yours.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
We
Yeah.
can at least.
You can at least, okay, that's good. Yes, so Sander and me can give some very personal insights also to the extensive use that we have been able to make of the Maurits Sabbe Library, of which you've already heard some highlights from Wart de Pril, the first speaker. Both of us would now like to give a few examples of how resilience could aid both our current and future research. And as Dries mentioned at the beginning of the seminar, the long-term goals of resilience include the research enhancing services, research enabling services, including multilingual data management, research data management tools and assistance, and an innovation lab. At the moment, in the current phase, there are 3 concrete services, a virtual hosting service, research data management content provider, and a limited transnational access program. So these are a few of the more concrete services that resilience can provide. And for me, as Dries already said, my specialization is systematic theology, with a focus on cognitive linguistics and religious language. And with that, I investigate religious experience. So I am at the moment completing an MA with the intention of continuing with a PhD. So what resilience could definitely help me with is the storage of data, the data that I am already generating with my current research, and which I would like to continue to be able to access in my future research. For me, because I'm focusing on linguistics, this will definitely include multilingual data. So it's extremely useful to have a content provider that can also deal with that level of linguistic data. And of course, one of the most concrete aids that resilience can offer, especially for students and PhD students, is the TNA, the Transnational Access, which provides funding and services for visiting partners across Europe in order to access specialized material and manuscripts. And these can often result in new and unexpected sources, especially since not all physical collections are yet completely digitized. And in addition to this, one of the aims of TNA is also to facilitate an ease of access to peers and professional networks, to be introduced to local experts, and through that to create a kind of network that you can also use for future research. So in short, by using TNA and resilience, you have a place to store your data in a single place, to access physical as well as digital collections, which for my specialization especially is extremely useful because I will be using both. And it allows you to build up a professional network, which is invaluable for future career prospects. Finally, in addition to this, I also have a solid interest in pastoral theology. So this is more applied theology. And here, I think resilience can also play an invaluable role. A lot of ordained ministers are themselves academics, quite often highly regarded experts in their respective religious fields. And I think one of the strengths of resilience is that there is an openness to not just academic research, but also to all kinds of data, to all kinds of research, and to facilitate knowledge networks, also on the level of call it professional, the professional network. And that, I think, is for me the two branches that I'm interested in, that resilience could definitely be of use for. So yes, and I would now like to give the floor to Sander Vloebergs, who has recently completed his PhD here, and knows a lot more about the mounted Sabbath services than I do.
Thank you, Lineke. I'm gonna try to figure out how to work with my PowerPoint. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, great. I think my intervention is gonna be rather short and a bit more informal. Like Lineke said, I just finished my PhD, which was literally 1 week ago that I defended. I got my PhD in theology and in literature, which means that for a very long time, I've been very text-oriented. Despite that, actually for 10 years now when I'm studying theology, my interest is also in image and especially in body and the moving body. So what I've discovered as a research interest that I also would like to pursue in the future is including what I call imaginative, performative, and or even artistic theologies. So starting from this background, I'm questioning, or I'm proposing questions to resilience, like how can we make sure that these sources for theology and religious studies, which are often not text-based, are also included for young or senior researchers. So starting from my experience as a PhD student and what I could benefit from if resilience was known to me by then, because of course now I will definitely use resilience services as a postdoc researcher. Definitely with my previous research on, which was text-based, I had very good critical editions to do my work on mystical texts of the 13th century. But I would definitely have benefited the transnational access. And for me, it would have been interesting to meet scholars. For me, my main interest would have been to meet peers, to meet other students, because my books, my source material was at hand. Nevertheless, I'm also trying to highlight the workshops that are very interesting. And I think for young research, especially the visibility. So that's something that I wanted to quickly mention now. I think as now finishing my my years as a PhD student and early postdoc, I think we need that visibility to collaborate with resilience and have them also create a platform for us to share our publications, share our ideas, and have that feedback of more senior researchers. This is just my last slide. What are my future perspectives, or what would I like to propose to resilience, starting from this interest in moving bodies? So I want to start a postdoc project that is working on dance and the Catholic imagination in the 20th century. And then I'm just questioning, like, okay, where are my sources, and is resilience a platform that can help me there? Because I think we have been talking a lot about texts, of course, and also Professor Watte has also mentioned the art and the illuminations of the manuscripts. But what with actual moving bodies? How can we work on rituals, which are, of course, very important for religious studies, but also embodied practices and, for example, dances? I think it's a completely new perspective as well, coming from dance studies. Like, how do we archive these things, and how can we also include this in our study of religion? I think that's a very interesting question for the future
also for resilience to think about how we can provide this as a service. And then another comment that I'd like to make also with this research profile, I do collaborate with contemporary artists, for example, also regarding this dance. I'm a dancer myself, but I think these collaborations are very interesting and necessary also between theology or the other humanities and the arts. So in which way can we also include this? Because we're talking about collections. Is there also access to, for example, very recent contemporary art exhibitions? It's again like a new perspective, or maybe we are working on it already, I don't know, but I think that's something that I would like to incorporate within this talk about services and access digitally and physically. And then also the TNA. So imagine if we have like physical access, is there also, for example, a possibility to do field work? So not only just going and traveling to check sources, but even collaborating with collaborating with artists or with heritage labs, or and this is of course interesting for younger students as well, but also for older senior researchers who want to study, for example, rituals or embodied practices. In that way, we need to provide a field work which is close to our TNA system, but something that we might include in the future as well.
Thank you very much, Sander. You see that due to the physical location, we have to switch speakers. And also Sander is assisting us together with Isaac the man technically here. So this is also an opportunity for me to thank them for that right now. So this is, I think, these were the presentations to give you some insight in what is going on at the KU Leuven Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies, to try to go from these physical collections and also making them available digitally, how Libis is assisting us with that, with the work that is done in the Book Heritage Lab, the immense work that is also been done by our library. So I think you've gotten now some insights on this. I haven't seen any questions popping up during the presentations, but I would now like to give the floor to you. It might be that that you want to have some more information on one of the aspects that were mentioned in the presentations, that you want to have some more general insights in aspects that link these different presentations. So feel free to raise your questions now in the chat, and then I will be more than happy to give them to our speakers. So feel free to write something in the chat. It's always a difficult step to raise the first question. There is a question coming. There's a question coming from Andras Handel. Andras, we can also try that you just unmute your microphone if you want.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for this interesting presentation. It was very interesting to see how resilience and religious kind of growing from each other and interwoven, and how it's going to grow into a great and big project. But I'm interested mostly is how the services are working. So for instance, I'm thinking about to start a project where I would collect a lot of data which I need to store somewhere and also access it. How can resilience help me in this?
Thank you very much, Andras. So I think it's as a kind of premise, maybe a somewhat disappointing premise, is that resilience is still right now in this pre-preparatory phase. So right now we are fully developing this. So there are these intentions indeed that when the preparatory phase will start and when resilience will be implemented, that indeed resilience will be helping further with also hosting your data, and also putting it in the right formats. But I think this is more something for also relating somewhat to work package 3, where Michiel is our expert. So I'm going to pass this question also to Michiel.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah, as Professor Bosgaard said, we're still in the pre-preparatory phase, and actually organizing the hosting itself, it's something that takes a lot of time to design. But when it comes to collecting large amounts of data, the only issue isn't storage space. There are other solutions for that as well. But during the course of resilience, I also had to interview a few researchers who collect a lot of data. And for them, they say that a lot of problems that they had later on could have been avoided better if they had some advice on how to store their data and how to organize it and things like that. So that's something that's a bit more low level, that at an earlier phase, resilience can start doing, like a sort of research data management help desk, which we hope can also already help researchers along the way before everything else is ready.
Right, thank you so much. But
thank you, Michiel. I think Michiel is also, or I want to focus also on two aspects that Michiel just raised. So I think Michiel also said that they have been interviewing also researchers. So that has been one of these central aspects in this pre-preparatory phase of indeed interviewing the stakeholders in this, looking into with which data they are working and how it can be integrated. And then I think that the second aspect is indeed what Michiel says, and what I want to point out again, that right now we're planning on implementing already a couple of small aspects in resilience. So we have spoken already about this transnational access program, which we will try to start in September. And also Michiel is involved in this help desk for data management, which we also hope to start in September. So I hope I have helped you with that, or that we have helped you with these answers. But it at least gives you something to look forward to September. Don't know if there is another question by one of the participants. So we can unmute your microphone, or we can give you the floor, but it might be good to first in the chat point out if you want to raise a question. Don't see anything appearing for the moment. So I'm going to give you some more time to reflect on some questions if you want. Maybe I can drop in a question for now. So one of the things when we were preparing this webinar was that indeed I think what all of our speakers today somehow have in common is that they all in their research have to combine these different perspectives, these different expertise as research experts, but at the same time, many of their research projects or many of their projects also include this more technical expertise. So I was, maybe if I can ask all of our speakers how in their daily work they are indeed confronted with this kind of interdisciplinary collaboration. And how it brings your work to a next level, or how you keep that working. I don't know, Bart, if I can start with you.
Well, if yeah, we have to collaborate, of course, with a lot of people. Um, First, with regard to content, you could say, otherwise with regard to technical support. With regard to technical support, luckily we have, of course, Libis, and we have, of course, technical specialists at the university library. With regard to our collaboration with researchers, we always had a close connection with researchers in the library. We have our advisors, referees in every research unit who are following the policy of the library, especially with collection development. And this collaboration is also extending because the library is getting more and more involved in every stage of the research cycle. You could say not only the output, there's the publications, which is our traditional domain, but also with regard to research data, as is already mentioned. The library also tries to give support to researchers, for instance, to give advice for which data they have to store, they have to preserve, because certainly in the field of theology, that is not evident. Also, we are asking advice from researchers how we can make our collections more visible. Which collections do we have to make more visible, so that we can work out specific discovery platforms, for instance, like I mentioned with regard to mission journals. And what also could be a mission of the library is to create virtual research communities around collections, virtual reading rooms. And there we need input of researchers. What are their needs? What do they expect of us? How can we make our collections more visible, accessible, discoverable? We need constant dialogue with researchers, what their needs are, and how we can make our collections more usable for them.
Thank you. It's a very intriguing question what digital images are doing and what the physical approach of seeing library materials and special materials. And I got the experience that the way you look to the objects, it changes what you see. It's a disconnection of time and place that you can access the digital images whenever you want, day and night, during the weekends. And when you access the physical book, it's during the library hours. So it's very complementary. And you see, as a scholar and a researcher, you using your time, you can be with the real thing, and then you have the supplementary information. And each time you return to your digital image, you see other things that you see on the real object. And it's a really cross-fertilization in my study and my the way I'm using the digital imaging, if it's just the traditional, having access to large data sets of text, or to very, very particular imaging techniques. And I think the cross-fertilization is amazing because it really makes you your research profounder, richer, and it gives this special layer of information that cannot be seen by the human eye or the human brain at one level. So it's amazing, interesting how the quick changes in digitalization and digital technologies gives the possibilities and enhance the research opportunities for scholars in many, many ways. So that's my point of view about digital and physical material objects.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up again on the relationship between scholars and technical experts, because that's basically my job. I'm neither, so a lot of what I do is translating, on the one hand, the very common sense ways that researchers expect things to behave or what they want to do, and then put that into more concrete terms for technical staff, and then also communicate back to them what the technical possibility and limitations are. And it's always a very interesting balance between the two, you know, the differences, but also the communal interests between the two, and what some people want but isn't necessarily possible, or things that they didn't know was possible that could help them along a lot of way. I think it's probably something you also come across when you start working with engineers all of a sudden, that there's a lot of different perspectives on what's possible and what isn't possible and what's desirable that maybe they haven't thought of yet, because from their technical perspective, it's not something necessarily very interesting. So yeah, I think the relationship between the two always leads to interesting new insights. Also sometimes because you have to find solutions that aren't very obvious or something like that.
Thank you very much. I think, Lieve, you pointed out the cross-fertilization and the importance of this cross-fertilization. And I think that's very nicely put. And I think that comes back in all of your work. I don't know if in the meantime, there are some more questions from those following. Don't know if you want to raise your hand or something, you can still do. We might still have time for one more question before closing this webinar down. Feel free to take your chance now. We're forever silent, at least in this webinar. If not, I think maybe a final question by me, because I think we've raised, or we try to show you the importance of some of the collections here. So people might be wondering if they can just come visit the library collections, if they can come and make use of the Book Heritage Lab, or if they can send in their next proposal for a research project to Libis to provide all technical support. So it might be helpful for those following, just to know how accessible all these, all the collections, all the technical infrastructure that you have, how available and accessible it is to everyone.
Sure, we certainly welcome all scholars in our library. We have had scholars in the past from RARES, and we can give you a library card. That's certainly not a problem. We also look for a solution that you have a place to work in the library, sometimes even an office. We can give a tour in the library. So we have very adequate opening hours. Of course, we're still in the Corona regime, but I think very soon, during summer already, and certainly at the beginning of the new academic year, we have our normal opening hours will be open from 8:30 to 10 o'clock. And yeah, you have all facilities in the library to work, and we are here to help you with all your questions you have to consult the physical or the digital collection. Also our heritage collection or special collections, you're able to consult them between 9 and 5. We have collection experts who are here to help you with all your questions about the collection. So everybody is very welcome to come and do research here in our library.
Thank you. I would say if you're thinking about a research proposal and you think that special imaging techniques or heritage science might be useful for a part of your master or PhD dissertation, contact us and we can start a dialogue. Of course, in the beginning, usually the question is far too large, but we can help to pinpoint the protocol, the technical tools we can use, and also what you can get out as a result. And we, in the dialogue and in the discussion, we learn to get to a realistic result. So if you would have interest, please contact us. If it's too wide away from Leuven, we have contacts with other labs in other universities around Europe. and we can direct them versus them. So we are really, we will try to help to the international platforms of research and research collections. Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to projects, Libis has in the past already worked on different projects with including external partners as well in the past. When it comes to research, for example, under certain conditions, we're also willing to put up new data there that partner institutions have on offer. And more specifically within resilience, as Dries has already mentioned, there's some already low-level services being set up in which Libis will also play a part. One of it being sort of research data management help desk, and also on the other hand, ways for people to yeah, make their content, their data more widely accessible.
So I'm going to continue with what Michiel said. I think we're indeed trying to integrate many of these services within resilience. So I think it's so keep an eye on what resilience is doing. I think Lineke will also put in the chat for you all the link to our resilience website. So feel free to visit the website, subscribe to the newsletter, or start following resilience on social media. And then you can stay informed on the activities of resilience, and when the projects become more concrete. So this also brings me then to the end of our webinar. First of all, I want to thank all our speakers, Bart, Lieve, Michiel, Sander, Lineke, also Isaac for his technical support, and all the speakers for their nice introductions in the work being done here at the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies of KU Leuven. I hope it was interesting and insightful enough for you all following. But in the coming days, you will receive also of us a feedback form, which you can complete. That will also give us some ideas on how to improve this kind of webinars, and also to gain some more insights on your expectations with resilience or your concerns, because I think that's one of the primary focuses of resilience, to truly integrate the concerns of its potential users. So many thanks for following, and hopefully we'll see each other here in the Moritz Sabel Library somewhere in the future, in real life, or somewhere else internationally in the context of resilience or in any other context. Many thanks for following, and many thanks also to my speakers once again. Goodbye all.